This Bitcoin bull market is really picking up steam. It's just hit $52,000, hitting our next price target, taking us all the way back to December of 2021. Something doesn't feel right, but the market keeps going up. So in today's video, I want to share with you some experiences from the past, looking at what's going on right now in the market as the exuberance heats up for Bitcoin, for our beloved 30, 50, 100x altcoins, potentially today it's 31x, and what we can look at moving forward, especially as we have been extremely bearish at the lows, and now things are starting to get that little bit hot in the market. Bitcoin is literally knocking out 35% returns in a matter of weeks. So you know what to do. Hit that like button as you jump onto the channel, your home of macro cycle analysis. We're covering the stock markets, Bitcoin, crypto, and of course the real estate cycle. Now, I don't want to get too bearish on the market whatsoever. We have been very much on point with the bull market, calling for the lows while the majority weren't. And plenty of posts here that we could go through. And the reason being is the market sentiment. Basically, what's going on out there and what people are saying and doing and all sorts of stuff, just to give us an insight as to the feelings of the market. Now, on top of the feelings of the market, I want to stick with the objective data, looking at the bull markets that we've seen in the past and how they have continued to rally despite the fears in the economy, despite recession, despite interest rate rises, despite wars, despite black swan events, despite you insert it, the markets have continued to go up. Now, of course, as we have been pointing out time and time again, I don't think this is going to be forever, but what I think is going to be the most important now is to prepare us for the bull market. And basically, I've got here the disbelief in the moves to the upside. I think what we're going through in the markets is around this hope and optimism. And throughout periods of the market, we're going to rally into euphoria and then come back down into capitulation, but on a shorter term time frame. So for the longer term, for the macro, we're still looking at hitting these strides for the stock market. But as we continue to go through probably this stage over and over and over again, I suspect it's going to be like hope into a disbelief, a bit of a pullback, and then into optimism and a pullback, and sort of rinse and repeat on the way up. And I want to show you that in the charts in just a moment. Links in the top of the video description for the free crypto and economic report, and of course TIA premium. But I just wanted to get started with this because I feel like it's a big weight on my shoulders that I want to share with you, the viewer, what I'm feeling, but more importantly, what I'm thinking the market is going to do based on the analysis. Now, it can never be right 100% of the time, and there are going to be instances, I would say, in the short term where the markets can get away a little bit. But as I said, I do feel the weight, and I want to share with you as best as I possibly can what I think is going on in the markets and how to prepare for that, rather than try and give you some ridiculous price targets or remain bearish over and over and over again, or to the flip side, remain bullish over and over and over again. Now, we've continued to pick up steam throughout this bull market, while I guess others had been relatively bearish the entire way up and continue to be bearish. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you because of the massive conversations that are going on in the comments section, and I suspect it's going to continue as the market picks up as well. So I just wanted to get a little bit more of a one-on-one there with you guys as best we can here on YouTube as we continue on with this bull market. So what we saw in the last 12 months was a very different story to what we're seeing right now. The different story back then is we were looking for the bottom and the rise out of that bottom into a disbelief stage. So I posted this in March of 2023, nearly 12 months ago. And if you look back at the comments, a lot of people were not believing that it was the low. A lot of people were looking for a collapse. As you can see here, this was just one instance because there were a lot of other comments from certain known analysts and so forth that were telling us that the markets had to collapse even further from that point, looking at our Wall Street cheat sheet, looking for complacency on the NASDAQ, on Bitcoin, and all that sort of thing, when meanwhile we're actually at the bottoms and the market was heading up into disbelief. You can go back and check these out, but just to save you a lot of the time there, that was the feeling at the time. that most were expecting that the markets had to go further down, that we were just bouncing out of anger and there was going to be a lot longer in the move to the downside. So when you see what happened before, because as we look at here, study the past to try and forecast the future as best we possibly can, we're seeing a little bit of a different story here. Now, this different story can go on longer than we anticipate. We've got plenty of those quotes saying the market can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. So it's always best to trade with the trend and not to try and short the hell out of a rising market, as many traders continue to do. You may have seen those sort of things. Those will get you wrecked time and time again. But essentially, looking at what's going on in the market now, I definitely feel these areas are in play. Belief, thrill, euphoria. Obviously, the ETF is in play and the markets keep rising from that point. I'm not trying to be bearish whatsoever because the chart is still up. But of course, eventually you do need to get some sort of correction. Now, in terms of corrections, all Bitcoin has seen is 20%, 21%, 22%, 21.5%. So it might be a little foolish to expect extreme moves to the downside to come back and test some previous tops. It's not impossible, but just looking at what's happened, if we are to get a significant correction, something to at least pause the market, I wouldn't anticipate anything too over the top considering what we have gone through. Now, I think that's going to be the same for the S&P 500 and probably even more so for the S&P 500, which has broken into new highs and just in the last couple of days has had a little bit of a reversal here. If we just look at the daily chart, you can see it had a move down as we covered yesterday, 1%. It's basically had a little bit of a bounce back from this point. So I want to come back to that in just a moment, looking at the weekly chart, but finishing up on the feelings of the market now 7-8 months ago, going back to June. We looked specifically at how the bottom was most likely in, and anything was any corrections at that point from June onwards was a buy the effing dip opportunity. Bitcoin had many targets to the upside that it hasn't had in the past. Basically, it had gone up 381 days. It had never gone up 381 days and then broken back down to take out the low. And so it was very evident to me and hopefully to a lot of you guys at the time that Bitcoin was in the early stages of a bull market. And for now, it doesn't look like we are in the early stages of a bull market because a lot of these moves to the upside are met with a lot of hype, as opposed to what happened before when we were getting moves to the upside. It was very much disbelief. It's going to come back down. We're heading up. It's going to come back down. So that's how I'm reading this particular Wall Street cheat sheet. We have flipped into that next stage. And now it seems like, well, that's obvious. We are in that next stage, but it wasn't so obvious 6-12 months ago before this breakout in October of 2023. It was not obvious then to most that we were in the midst of the reaccumulation from the low and about to head up into new fresh highs. So by no means are we at the end of the bull market. I think there's still a lot left in it, but I'm preparing for the Wall Street cheat sheet, looking at these tops, where every time we're met with those tops of the euphoria and the thrill, and you're missing out on this altcoin and that altcoin, and you should have been on blah, 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 that is a clear sign that we are getting towards an end, whether it's an intermediate top like that, or is it the final top and we're about to head back down. That is a difficulty of trading, and trying to predict that is very, very tough. That's why I choose to stay with the swing indicator to let us know, well, the market looks like it should be rolling over. For now, the indicator is still up and, well, it's not rolling over at this point. It's just telling us that that's the direction of the trend, and we should continue to follow that direction. So for the S&P 500 and this mega bull market that we have been talking about for a long time, looking at the lows in 2022, the lows that came in 2023, at the time I was feeling like a broken record and everyone was expecting that this market was going to come back down. It had a complacency bounce. It was the biggest bear market rally of all time, and to be prepared for impending doom, looming recessions, you name it. If you were around in 2022 and 2023, you would have seen a lot of that reading from the media telling us that markets had to go down. The biggest YouTubers were doing the same thing in crypto, finance, whatever it was. We saw them. They were all telling us that the market had to go down because, well, that's what everyone else was saying. But, well, we know now from history that the market was going up. And so if we are into this bull market stage of what I'm calling an everything bubble, because we're seeing everything go up, real estate, stock markets, crypto, Bitcoins, you'll start to see ridiculous things like different pieces of art or maybe NFTs come back, just stupid crap going up. How do we assess that moving forward? Well, we've obviously got our 18.6-year cycle that suggests we should be coming to some sort of peak in 2026-ish. Let's not get too fixated on that just yet because it's potentially still a couple of years. But what happens until then? So let's have a look at the bull market leading from the GFC low into the peak. Yes, the peak of 2020, which came in February, running up into that late part of 2019, the collapse, and then basically we are rinsing and repeating that move. So what happened from that point? Well, the corrections were pretty slim. Corrections of single digits were very common throughout the move up. And so we can go back and have a look at each of these moves. Remember, this is on a weekly chart here. So for two of these bars to occur, you need roughly 6, 7, 8, 10 trading days to occur to get this pullback. And so that pullback was 4.5%. And now we can use our swing indicator just to give us a quick review of those corrections in the market, 6.5%. And if you can eyeball the rest of them here, looking at what a 6% move looks like, and then looking at a 9%, 14%, we look at the entire move there down to 17%. A lot of these were single digits on the way up, and the market just kept grinding higher and higher. Now, yes, there were a few significant corrections throughout that bull market of roughly 10 years. You've got one in 2010. It lasted several weeks there and then basically came all the way back. One in 2011. Had another one in 2015, which lasted into the early part of 2016. So a big move to the downside, another jump, and then another pullback here. So that was a good half of a year, 2015. Then we had the 2018 pullback, the 2020, which most of us remember, even if we weren't in the market. And then we had 2022, which saw the most significant pullbacks on each of those corrections. And so if 2022 had the most significant corrections, what are the chances that we'll see more of this in 2024, 2025? I think it's unlikely, not impossible, but unlikely considering how the bull markets have progressed in the past. And as they continue to climb, there's just smaller and smaller pullbacks because we get into this stage of the market where the corrections are getting bought up higher and higher, quicker and quicker. Markets can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. This is what I've seen lead to bull market tops, where things just keep climbing and climbing and climbing. Even 2021, late 2020 and 2021 was a perfect, let me get my words out here, perfect example of that type of move to the upside. 10.5%, then it was a smaller correction, again, smaller correction, 5.6%, tiny correction here, roughly 5% again. We had another correction here, 5.7%. And then as we led into the peak, another 5.5%. And then finally, as you can see on the swing indicator, market started to roll over. And from that point, we had a correction of 12%, and then all the way to the 2-week swing chart here, 14.5%. To the bottom was a total of 27.4%. And so if we've seen those already, I think the likelihood of seeing big corrections like that, probably into the likelihood of 20% or more, is unlikely for this period of time as we lead up into that final peak. Because essentially bull markets, if we are in that mega bull market that we're leading into that final peak, typically you don't see big corrections all the time. I'm not saying you won't see any, because obviously you've seen some here that are double digits. So just to clean up the chart so you can see those there, the entire move there, 21.5%, and that was basically the only 20% correction from the GFC low until you get to 2015. And now in 2015, there's your peak to the low. It was only 15%. And so to get to another 20% correction, it didn't occur until 2018. So you had a 20% in 2011, and then another one in roughly 2018 that led into the early part of 2019. The mid-decade bulge has 100 years of data. We are into the next mid-decade bulge with another roughly 2 years remaining, 2024 and 2025. What it's seen in the past is a rough 60% gain. That leads us into March of 2026. Pay particular attention to quarter one, quarter two of 2026. The mid-decade bulge just means what the market does between that period of end of the second year of the decade, so 2022, which is basically the low of the market, running into that first quarter, second quarter, basically call it the first half of the sixth year. And so for that period of 3, 4, 5, so basically 3.5 years, you have pretty significant gains going back over 100 years. So I'm very much in the camp of a macro bull market, and what we can see from some of the statistics is any of these corrections typically aren't overly severe. So how does that help us with Bitcoin, and what's going on with Bitcoin right now? As we start a new day, a new trading day, it's now hit $52,400, so it's gone up again today, extending the streak of days up at 10 days now with a 24% move. So basically higher highs, higher lows, no breakdown of that move yet. We're at the 10th day. So the resistance levels that I see to the upside now, should we continue to hold above 52,000, we've now held above the 50% level at $50,500. And now we have the 52K level, which was those previous swing tops. The market needs to close there. I like to see at least 3 days above those levels. The next level, I mean, that's a simple one, $60,000. I'm no genius to pick that one up. Even you guys could have picked that up as well. 60 grand psychological level. And then I've got my $62,500 level, which is a 100% repeat of the move out of that September low to the ETF top, projected from the ETF correction low, and basically your 100% move there. And so if this continues on with shallow corrections, we've seen 20, 22%, I guess we can anticipate that, well, altcoins are also going to do the same thing. This brings up multiple different theories moving forward. Should this move continue on as it is right now with a potential left-hand translated cycle? If you're new and unfamiliar with those sort of 4-year cycles, we're just looking at cycle measuring from the low to the low. Now, if the top of the market comes in on the left-hand side, well, that's a weak market, even though it has shot up a lot, just meaning that it could take a lot longer to get to that low, which would mean the multi-year bear market happens sooner than what I'm thinking. But there's still time. If Bitcoin can at least find another solid ground to correct on, obviously over the next few days or weeks, then we could at least hope that the market will consolidate, even if it is at a high ground. Give us some time before it can continue up and push higher. The worst thing you want to see for this bull market is a top before quarter 4 of 2024. If you see a top before quarter 4 and the market look weak, getting ready to head down, that means you're going to see a longer bear market to that next low. But if we see a top after quarter 4 of 2024, although it takes longer, that's going to be a stronger market because you've got more participants and more buying opportunity throughout the next stage or that final stage of the market into that peak. So although it seems like this is a great thing for Bitcoin going straight up, that's not what you want to see in markets. You can see from the past, when it did it in 2019, very, very quickly straight up, less than 6 months there, breakout in April to a peak in June, it took quite a long time to at least find its bottom. Yes, we had the COVID point there, but it took ages until it broke back past that high. We saw it again late in 2020 and then into 2021, basically hit that top very early, only got to the next top ever so slightly. At least we had the altcoin gains there, and then we saw 12 months to the downside. But if this happens too soon, then I think we've got a lot longer to play out to the downside before we get that rinse and repeat. I still see more time for Bitcoin to consolidate here. We haven't got that extreme move, taking out the tops and just basically flatlining after that point, having a big correction. So I'm not in the camp that we're going to get that left-hand translated cycle. We don't need to worry about that right now, because essentially that's just giving us a topping signal when it occurs. So we don't need to worry about that right now. The other thing that's on our side is the macro environment, the macro markets, the S&P 500, NASDAQ, the real estate markets, they are all still going up and they still have a little more time left in their cycle as well. So for now, there is still no major signal to say that this is going to be a left-hand translated cycle. So what do? Keep looking for altcoins. Look for your degenerate gains to the upside. checking out, well, I've got the swing indicator here, looking at how these markets are continuing up, even though it seems really crazy that we are heading into a lot of belief and thrill and euphoria. I'm putting that aside and just continuing on with the job of getting the altcoins that you think are going to do those mega gains. Now, if you're uncertain, this is the big one. If you're uncertain as to which ones to get, the thing I like to look at is the Bitcoin chart. So I've got all my Bitcoin pairings here. And if the altcoin is going down against its Bitcoin value, it's typically not a very strong altcoin, which means you, well, I guess, don't want to be getting into that altcoin because it's not making the gains like BTC. So basically, I'm just skimming down my list to have a look at what is holding up and what isn't. And unfortunately, some of the big names are not holding up, but you can get to some that are holding up, and they're doing a relatively good job at maintaining that ground and that strength against Bitcoin, even though Bitcoin's going up. Now, Link, as we looked at yesterday, it's still holding ground from where it lowered in January, but it is starting to head down from that point. The same deal with Injective as well. Injective being a huge runner from January 2023, so now over 12 months, well, basically took 12 months to get to the peak, and slowly has been distributing at these highs. And you can see that lower tops getting formed, breaking down significant lows here. Volume is drying up, but it continues to break down. And on the smaller timeframes here on the daily, you can see the volume on the daily charts is higher on the way down than it is on the way up. You can see those white bars there as it continues to try and rally. It's just getting met with a lot of selling pressure. So I'm a macro bull. If this is the message for the video, macro bull, stay safe out there. If you are finding altcoins that are popping off, be sure to have your stops in play to take profits so that you don't have to suffer the big moves to the downside. Looks like Injective wants to break down. Well, it is breaking down now, and maybe it comes back to test some of those previous highs. So lock in some of those gains. It's not a reason to sell your entire bag. I think there is still more left in the overall bull market, but it might be opportune to take some of those profits and just position yourself ready for any of those next legs up, or rotate into something else that is looking stronger. Injective on this hand is also pushing up high. You can see higher highs, higher lows. But as I said, I just want to keep that caution there because I keep thinking about you guys here in the comment section. You're following the channel and moving away from other channels that are not giving you good information. And so I just want to remain level-headed with it because eventually these trends roll over. So have your stops in play, use your swing charts, put some sort of level that allows you to take some profits and stay safe in the market. Like and subscribe. I'll be back again with you at the next video. I hope you have a great one. Till then, take care and peace out.